Welcome to a special presentation on the topic of delegation. We've called this particular session, You Don't Need a Gopher. And that is designed to kind of play on the idea that a lot of people have when they think of delegation, and that is to have somebody to say, hey, go for this, hey, go for that. And in my opinion, that's a big reason of why delegation is the most misused word in the leadership spectrum. Our big idea today that we want to communicate is very simply that delegation is the art of empowering others to take ownership for part of the process. I'm going to say that again. Delegation is the art of empowering others to take ownership for part of the process. You might take a minute right now just to kind of think about what that means to you, because ultimately, if you can just really resonate with and take this with you when you go, you will be so much further ahead than most leaders. Our quote of the day is by one of the most famous leadership experts in the 21st century, Mr. John Maxwell, and he said, if you want to do a few small things right, do them yourself. If you want to do great things and make a big impact, learn to delegate. If you have ever considered the thought, or maybe even just had the thought, that if I want it done right, I have to do it myself, you need to be aware that that means that you are relegating yourself to only do a few small things right. You'll never do big things or make a big impact under the deception that in order to do it right, you have to do it yourself. Now, in order to get started today, our first big idea, key takeaway is going to be that we need to make sure we are selecting the right person. Select the right person. And I would imagine that you're thinking to yourself, well, how do I know who the right person is? Of course I want the right person. I'm not trying to put the wrong person. I get that. But a lot of times I don't think we actually ask this question. I don't know how often we as leaders are asking ourselves, is this the right person for this job? As much as we just simply ask, who can I get to do this job? So one of the problems that I think happens is that too many organizations are more concerned with this idea that somebody needs to do it than they are with making sure that the right person is doing it. And in this scenario, if we were here together in class, I would invite you to engage in an exercise that would really give you an idea of what it's like to be assigned the wrong thing. Since we're not together in class right now, I would invite you to just think for a second. And I want you to do two things. The first thing I want you to do is I want you to think of a scenario when you were given a job you didn't necessarily ask for. Maybe it was you applied for just a job, and they said, sure, come on in. And then you got put into a position that frankly was not your cup of tea. Or maybe you had a job you really liked and you got moved or promoted or something like that into a position that you didn't like. And I would ask you to reflect, how did you like that? How did you feel? Not only how did you feel today, but how did you feel a week later, a month later, 3 months later? Were you as passionate about what you were doing, or were you a bit disgruntled? Did you find it harder to find satisfaction being in a role that you didn't actually want to be in? You can contemplate that, and feel free to pause the video while you do, but once you've done so, I would invite you to contemplate another side of things, and that other side of things is, what about when you did get the job you wanted? Maybe you were in a job you didn't like, or it was kind of just, take it or leave it, but then you got that position that you really enjoyed. How much more passionate were you? How much more did you enjoy going to work? How much more did you look forward to Monday morning in a role that you really enjoyed? And hopefully you're in a role like that right now, but this opportunity to reflect should give us some perspective on what we do, whether for or to our people, when we're putting them in positions where they are either are the right person or are not the right person. Now, I don't want to just leave you with find the right person. How? How do we find the right person? How do we make sure that with the best of intentions and the purest of hearts, we don't accidentally put people in a position that they are not equipped or fulfilled or desirous to be in. I would like to recommend that you use a 4-step process. And this process is what I call whole person leadership. This is acknowledging that all of us are a combination of body, mind, heart, and spirit. And when we are delegating, whether it is a role or whether it is simply a task, we are taking all of this into consideration. The first question that we want to ask is, do they have the physical capacity to do what I am asking them to do? I think this is probably the one that we are the best at, in general anyways, because most of us are probably not going to put an elderly person in a physically demanding role. We're going to see that they're not physically able to do that. So this one might be the easier one, but it's still one we need to ask. Are they physically capable of fulfilling the role? The next thing we need to ask is, do they have the mental acuity for the role? I have seen a lot of individuals get put into roles that while they technically could do it, that's not where their mind was. And you might think of right brain versus left brain, right? Why are we going to put an analytical person in a creative space or a creative person in an analytical space, which is what I see more often? What is their mental acuity? Now, I'm not so much referring to their personality, although that could fall in this kind of general area of what's their mindset. Do they have a mindset? Personally, I have a mind for numbers. And so if you want to put me with a spreadsheet or analytics or data, that's going to be great. But not everybody does. Some people have a mind for creative expression, and they want to be able to express themselves as well as the work that they're doing. And I would be much less happy in that role than they are. So physical capacity, can they physically do it? Mental acuity, is their mind where it needs to be? And then this is one we almost never talk about, and that is emotional passion. What do they want to do? If you have seen our session, or if you've been a part of our session on nurturing, you know that we recommend that we nurture our people in their passions. But when we are delegating, this is something else we should be looking at. Where do they want to be? If you've ever watched The Office, you know that Kelly Kapoor in The Office is the customer success or customer service person, and she's great for it. She's outgoing, she's personable, she has no problem answering the phone cheerily after she just got chewed out by a client. On the other hand, Oscar is in finance, and Oscar is not the outgoing, bubbly personality. His analytics, everything has to be just right for him. Can you imagine if we had swapped them places? I mean, they're both physically able to sit at a desk. They both probably are intelligent enough to be able to do what needs to be done, although Oscar is in finance and Kelly is in customer service, and so there might be some training. But they would be so emotionally detached from their reversed roles that it wouldn't work very well at all. And maybe you've seen this. Maybe you've seen the analytical person get put at the front desk. Or maybe you've seen the person at the front desk get put into a back office somewhere. We got to be careful to make sure that we're aligning that with their emotional passion. And then lastly, we want to say the spiritual alignment. This is not a religious expression. This isn't faith-based. What we're really saying is that when we are delegating, we should never be asking people to violate their moral framework or their spiritual conscience. If we're asking them to do something that they believe is wrong, regardless of whether it is or isn't, we're going to find that they are not going to be super effective in that role, if for no other reason than they don't believe in it. But if we can find someone with the physical capacity and the mental acuity and the spiritual alignment and the emotional passion, there in the middle, we have the right person. The right person for the job. And there's a number of things you can do to get here, okay? There are skills tests. There are some personality tests. There are simple conversations. Most of the time before I hire someone, I ask to see the work, or at least the type of work, that they will need to do in the role for which I am hiring them. Why? It's not a I don't trust you, it's a I know that when people need a job, they are going to say that they can do things and that they like to do things that they do not actually like to do. I want to see it. I want to observe that acuity, that capacity, that passion, and that alignment in their role. So, find the right person. Once you have the right person, then our key takeaway number 2 is to empower success. Now, again, I think this is a problem that a lot of people have with delegation, where they find the right person. Let's assume it is. Let's assume for the sake of this conversation, they actually found the right person. But then they just expect that person to be able to do it. I know I've been guilty of this, where I just, well, you should be able to do it. You proved it. You did the little skills test, and you said you wanted to do this, so you should be able to do it. That's not really effective. That's not true leadership. We should be empowering success, and that can be in the form of training and development, but that can also be in the form of boundaries and facilitation. I think that the recipe for success in this era, or in this setting, is that we need to know the objective. They should be crystal clear on what it is that they are expected to do. We should train to that objective, so they should receive training to make sure they can actually meet it. We should monitor that objective, and monitoring is not the same as micromanaging. Monitoring is to keep tabs on what's going on. And then one thing that we also should be really good at, in my opinion, is we need to make sure that we are not sweating the path to the objective. Different people are going to do things different ways, and sometimes we as leaders, we become so insistent that people do it our way that we actually lose out on their ability to bring their own value to the table. What success is not is, oh look, it turned out well. Because if that is our definition of success, half the time we're just going to get lucky. The broken clock is right twice a day, but that doesn't mean that it's successful. It means that twice a day, it happens to be correct. So we really want to be looking more at, did we have a plan? Did we follow that plan? Did we learn, not if, but when we failed? And then did we reach a successful conclusion in that plan? So we should be finding the right person. We should be empowering success. And another quote that goes along with this that we can see from Andrew Carnegie is that no one will make a great business who wants to do it all themselves or take all the credit. Think about that. No one will make a great business who wants to do it all themselves or take all the credit. How does that resonate with you? How many managers, how many people in your life have you known that will never do anything great because they're trying to either do it all themselves or at least take all the credit? What are you going to do differently? Key takeaway number 3. We found the right person. We've empowered success. Key takeaway number 3 is we have to give responsibility and authority. The reason I said at the beginning that we often misuse delegation, this is the biggest part. Because what happens is that we give people tasks or outcomes, but we do not give them the authority to execute effectively. How do you know if you've done this right? The easiest way to know if you have effectively delegated is to count how many times the individual has to come back to you in order to proceed. Now, if they come back to you with questions, that might be back from key takeaway number 2. We might not have actually empowered their success, and so they're coming back to us going, hey, what about this? Hey, what about that? Hey, we didn't talk about this. Okay, that's back in step 2. But if they have to come back, hey, can I do that? Hey, is it okay if I do this? Would you be upset if I did that? You haven't actually given them the authority to do it. Because every time they've got to come back in order to get approval, in order to move forward, that means they don't have the authority to actually execute. Now, that doesn't mean you give them carte blanche, here's the checkbook, do whatever you need to do. There are boundaries. So you might say you have full authority to complete this project within these boundaries. You're allowed to spend X amount of money, or you're allowed to use X amount of man hours, or you're allowed to use this amount of space, or whatever it is. So you might put boundaries in place. But ultimately, the more times they have to come back to you in order to get permission to move on, the less likely it is that you have given both responsibility and authority. In fact, I would suggest that if it's, depending on the size of the project, I don't want to make a hard and fast rule, but if it's let's say a project that's designed to take less than a week, if they have to come to you for permission more than 3 times, give or take, you probably have not actually given them authority. They are probably being held responsible for the outcome without being given the authority for the process. So our final thoughts in this short and abbreviated section on delegation here. Number one, this is actually a quote by me, and I did that on purpose. Delegation is not pawning off the tasks you don't want. It's releasing the tasks that someone else is better suited to complete. It's not about just getting rid of the stuff you don't want to do. It's about saying, that's the right person. Let me empower them and release them to add value. Our second final thought is blank. I want to delegate the opportunity to you to tell us, what do you think of when you think of delegation? You are welcome to shoot me an email or just consider this. This isn't homework. But what do you think? I can put quotes. There's lots of delegation quotes. But what do you think? The parameter is anything on delegation. The responsibility is come up with a quote. The authority is that it can be anything, that it can be your quote, it can be somebody else's quote, but it's coming from you. What's your final thought? Maybe share this with somebody that is close to you or someone that you feel like can be helped. As we wrap up today's session, I would remind us that the word delegation is often used. Rarely is it used right. Delegation involves selecting that right person, and I recommend using the whole person leadership dynamic. It also includes ensuring that that person is empowered for success, that they have the training, the tools, the resources, everything they need to be successful. And then it means that we give them not just the responsibility, but also the authority to execute on that responsibility. Altogether, this is true delegation, and it can result in tremendously productive teams that are able to do incredible things. If you have any questions about this topic, feel free to reach out to us. Probably send that to enrollments@servantmindedleadership.com or assignments@servantmindedleadership.com. Speaking of assignments, you want to make it happen? You want to do this? You want to make it real? You don't have to turn this in, but here's a strategy for immediate implementation. Select 3 tasks that have real impact on the team to delegate, and ensure that those tasks are aligned with the capacity of the team members, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Provide them with any of the tools, resources, and trainings that they will need to succeed, and then set clear expectations for the intended outcome, while avoiding dictating how it will be done, but rather simply focusing on what you expect and the boundaries in which you expect it. If you really want to invest in yourself, if you want to make this something where you've wrestled with it and you've really thought about it, the personal investment assignment is think of every position that you have held and then record the following. What was the position? Why were you put in that position? Did you want that position? Were you the best person for that position? Why did you accept that position? And how did you feel 3 months after you took the position? And if you want to submit that to assignments@servantmindedleadership.com, you would be welcome to do that. We don't usually do a lot of commenting because this is more for you. And if you're seeing this video, you probably are not required to do this, but it is an opportunity for you to wrestle with that concept and make it your own instead of just something that you've heard from me. Any additional resources that we can give you, we would be absolutely delighted to do that. And I have enjoyed our time together. Thank you for joining us virtually on this video. I say our time together. I love empowering people. This is my passion. For me, I have the physical capacity to stand here and to speak and to move. I have the mental acuity to speak and to hopefully be able to hold attention and do the things that are necessary. Obviously, I have the passion. I am very, very passionate about this, and it definitely does not misalign with my moral framework, so that works out well as well. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for watching. I hope that this was beneficial and impactful and has given you something else, just a little something, that will give you what you need to be the most effective leader you can be. Thank you for joining SML Consultive for this video, and I wish you a great week.